Tina Turner was not only a global icon of rock and roll, she was also a mother. Beyond the dazzling lights, the Grammys, and the unforgettable performances, was a woman who carried the burdens of love, heartbreak, and the difficult decisions that define parenthood. And for many of you watching now, especially in your later years, you know better than anyone that motherhood or fatherhood never truly ends, even when the children are grown. It deepens, complicates, and sometimes breaks your heart. Tina had 4 sons, Craig Ike Jr., Michael, and Ronnie. And each of their lives tells a story that mirrors many of our own families. Hope and hardship, closeness and distant success shadowed by pain. Some of her children are no longer with us. Some lived in her shadow, others drifted far from it. But through it all, she remained a mother. Flawed, human, loving. If you've ever had to let go of a child, watch one suffer, or carry guilt for decisions made long ago, this story will speak to your soul. Stay with us as we walk through the quiet, powerful legacy of Tina Turner. Not just as a music icon, but as a mother navigating the hardest role of all. Craig Raymond Turner was Tina Turner's firstborn. The child she had before fame, before stardom, before the storm of a life lived under the public eye. Born in 1958, when Tina was still known as Anime Bullock, Craig entered the world as the son of saxophonist Raymond Hill, a member of Ike Turner's band. His father left before he was born, returning to Mississippi and leaving young Anime to raise their baby on her own. When Tina married Ike Turner in 1962, Ike adopted Craig, giving him his last name. From that moment, Craig became part of the Turner family, growing up with Ike as his father figure, whether he wanted him or not. But the Turner household was no safe haven. Craig's childhood was shaped by chaos and fear. He was a gentle, emotionally sensitive boy, and Tina later recalled how deeply the violence between her and Ike affected him. While most children his age were learning to read or ride a bike, Craig was quietly watching his mother suffer behind closed doors. Tina remembered one night, when after a particularly violent episode, little Craig knocked on the door and asked, "Mom, are you okay?" That soft, concerned voice pierced her heart more than any of the abuse she endured. She would later say that moment changed something in her, forever realizing that her son wasn't just witnessing pain, but was emotionally absorbing it. Craig grew up quietly, never one to seek the spotlight his mother and adopted father lived in. Those who knew him described him as reserved, protective of Tina, and someone who carried the weight of the past quietly. After Tina left Ike in 1976, Craig, already a teenager, began to step into adulthood. He chose a very different path than music. He enlisted in the United States Navy, seeking structure, escape, and perhaps a sense of peace. After completing his service, he built a new life in Los Angeles, working as a real estate agent. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and that was something Craig seemed to value most. Though Tina went on to become a global icon, Craig never chased celebrity. He was content with a quieter life, far from the cameras and stages. Yet Tina often shared that Craig still carried emotional scars from his childhood. She could sense that something followed him into adulthood, something deep and unspoken. But like many mothers, she never quite knew how to reach that part of him, no matter how much she loved him. By the late 20s and 10s, it looked as if Craig had found happiness. He had just started a new job at a respected real estate firm and told Tina that he had met someone special, a woman who made him feel things he had never felt before. Tina was thrilled. For the first time in a long while, her son sounded truly happy. He was excited to introduce his new girlfriend to his mother on his upcoming birthday, saying he had never loved anyone like this. Tina believed he was entering a new chapter in life, one filled with hope and possibility. That's why what happened next was so incomprehensible. On July 3, 2018, Craig took his own life. He was 59 years old, found in his Los Angeles home with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His death shocked and devastated those closest to him. Tina was heartbroken. She later confessed in interviews that she didn't see it coming. Their last few phone calls had been different, but she hadn't recognized the signs at the time. In their final conversation, and Craig told her, "I just wanted to hear your voice in that laugh." It was something he had never said before. After his death, Tina would reflect on that moment and realized it was his goodbye. In her grief, Tina scattered Craig's ashes off the coast of California, surrounded by close family and friends. She called it the saddest moment of her life as a mother. Standing on that boat, watching the waves carry away the ashes of her first child, she felt a pain that fame, fortune, and even time could never erase. He was almost 60 when he died. But to Tina, he was still her baby. The little boy who once knocked softly on a door to protect his mother. His loss was more than personal. It was a wound that never fully closed, and a reminder that even love cannot always quiet the echoes of childhood pain. Craig's story isn't just a tragedy. It's a quiet call for compassion, for understanding the invisible burdens that people carry, especially those who seem strong or stable on the outside. It's a reminder to check in with those we love, to listen closer, and to never underestimate the power of a kind word or a thoughtful question. As we reflect on Tina Turner's legacy, let us also remember Craig not for how he died, but for the tender heart he carried and the love he gave, even in silence. If Craig Turner was the quiet soul carrying invisible scars, Ike Turner Jr. was the son caught between two worlds, between two legacies, two parents and two versions of love. Born in 1958 to Ike Turner Sr. and Lorraine Taylor, Ike Jr. was just a toddler when Tina married his father and took on the role of stepmother. But in his own words, Tina wasn't just a stepmother. She was the only mother he ever knew. Raised in the whirlwind of Ike and Tina's musical empire, Ike Jr.'s childhood was far from ordinary. While most kids were riding bikes or going to school dances, he was backstage on tour buses and inside recording studios. From a young age, he showed a natural talent for music. First on the drums, then piano, and eventually mastering bass and guitar as well. Tina encouraged his growth as a musician, often reminding him to practice, even if it meant packing up his drum set every night. It was a musical household, and Ike Jr. soaked up every note. But growing up with Ike Turner as a father came with a price. The same man who taught him music also taught him fear. Ike Jr. witnessed his father's rage and dominance not only over Tina, but over everyone in his path. And when Tina finally made the brave decision to leave Ike in 1976, it threw the family into chaos. Ike Jr., then a teenager, tried to support Tina in her new life. He even worked as her sound engineer for a time, trying to remain connected to the woman who had raised him. But that decision came at a devastating cost. Ike Sr., furious that his son was working with Tina, took his anger out on him. According to Ike Jr., his father beat him with a nickel-plated .45 pistol, an act of brutality meant to punish him for showing loyalty to Tina. That moment didn't just leave physical scars, it left emotional ones too. It was the cruel reminder that love in the Turner family often came with consequences. Despite the trauma, Ike Jr. never abandoned music. He carved out a life of his own, separate from both parents. And in 2006, he achieved something his father would have been proud of. He won a Grammy for producing and engineering his father's album, Risin' with the Blues. It was a complicated moment, bridging both pride and pain. On one hand, it was a professional triumph. On the other, it was a connection to a man whose violence had deeply impacted him. In the years that followed, Ike Jr. kept working in music. He formed a tribute band called The Love Thang and continued producing. In 2022, he released a track called Yes to Life with singer Sweet Randy Love, a title that suggested optimism, perhaps even healing. Music remained his lifeline, his way of honoring both his heritage and his survival. But emotionally, his connection to Tina grew distant. By 1985, less than a decade after the divorce, Ike Jr. admitted that he and his brothers Michael and Ronnie rarely heard from Tina. In interviews, he expressed confusion and sadness. "I know she's busy," he said, "but I don't know why she hasn't called." That lingering silence grew heavier with time. By 2018, Ike Jr. revealed that he hadn't spoken to Tina in nearly 20 years. His voice held no anger, only a quiet resignation. "My mother is living her life," he said. "She has a new husband. She's in Europe. She doesn't want anything to do with the past." For many, that choice might be difficult to understand. But for Tina, cutting ties with the past may have been necessary for her healing. For Ike Jr., it meant navigating adulthood without the guidance or closeness of the only mother he ever truly had. It's a reality that many adult children of trauma face. The complex dance of forgiveness, absence, and self-preservation. Sadly, Ike Jr.'s path took a dark turn just weeks before Tina's death in 2023. In May of that year, he was arrested for possession of crack cocaine and attempting to destroy evidence, allegedly trying to eat the drugs when stopped by police. He was sentenced to a short jail term and tragically was behind bars when the news of Tina's passing broke. There is something especially heartbreaking in the thought that the son who once stood between his parents' war, who tried to honor both legacies, was alone at that final moment, disconnected, struggling unseen. Yet through it all, Ike Jr. continues to carry the Turner name with pride. "All I try to do is do the right thing with the name," he once said. His story is not one of blame, but of complexity. A son who inherited both brilliance and burden, who still seeks purpose in his music, and who perhaps, like many of us, just wanted to be seen, heard, and loved by the ones who mattered most. If Ike Turner Jr. walked a tightrope between two legacies, then Michael Turner chose to step away from the spotlight altogether. Quiet, private, and deeply affected by the turmoil of his youth, Michael's story is perhaps the least known, but no less significant. Born in 1959, Michael was the younger full brother of Ike Jr. And like his brother, he was the biological son of Ike Turner Sr. and Lorraine Taylor. When Tina married Ike, she adopted Michael and raised him as her own. But while Ike Jr. embraced the family's musical roots and life on the road, Michael retreated inward. Unlike his siblings, he never pursued a public career in music, or did he appear in interviews or public events. He seemed to actively avoid the attention that followed the Turner name. Still, the chaos within the household left a deep imprint. As a teenager, Michael lived through the same violent environment as his brothers. When Tina left Ike in 1976, the family was splintered. And for Michael, the separation wasn't just emotional, it was destabilizing. Years later, Ike Jr. would recall how hard Michael took the divorce. "Michael wanted my mother and father to get back together," he said, "and the next thing I knew, he was in the hospital." That simple yet devastating sentence speaks volumes. Whatever happened during that time wasn't just a reaction. It was a collapse. A young man already struggling with emotional balance found himself adrift when the family he clung to dissolved. In a world where many children internalize trauma, Michael may have lacked the tools or the support to process it. As an adult, Michael drifted even further into the background. He avoided the music industry and lived a life mostly out of public view. Reports suggest that he struggled with addiction in his later years, though he rarely spoke publicly about it. In one rare quote, he acknowledged that his family, Tina included, would help him if he reached out. But he chose not to. "I know in my heart if I called Tina or my father right now, they would come and help me," he said. "But I just can't do it." That admission reveals a deep emotional wall, one that wasn't built by pride, but perhaps by shame, fear, or a fierce desire for independence at all costs. Michael praised Tina, saying she had been good to him, but he also made clear he couldn't live under anyone's rules. "I can't live with anybody. I got to be free to do what I want to do," he said. That freedom, though, came with a price. Over the years, Michael's health declined. According to Ike Jr., he suffered multiple strokes and seizures, eventually leaving him wheelchair-bound and in need of full-time care. In recent years, Michael has been living in a convalescent home in Southern California. While Tina never visited him in person, during that time she did provide financial support for his medical care. Quietly from afar, she made sure he was taken care of. In her own way, she never stopped being his mother. Michael's story is a powerful reminder that not all pain is visible, and not every life follows a path of redemption or fame. Sometimes the greatest strength is simply surviving in the aftermath of chaos, in the silence between headlines. And sometimes love is given quietly in the form of support no one sees. But that makes all the difference. While Michael chose a life away from the spotlight, Ronnie Turner, the youngest of Tina Turner's 4 sons, was born right in the heart of it. As the only biological child of Tina and Ike Turner together, Ronnie arrived in 1960 when his parents were fast becoming one of music's most talked about power duos. Unlike his older brothers, Ronnie was raised with more privilege and material comfort. Private schools, allowances, designer clothes. Tina once said that Ronnie had everything a child could want. But sometimes having everything still isn't enough to protect a child from the shadows within a family. From an early age, Ronnie struggled with behavior that Tina described as self-destructive. Despite her efforts to keep him on a stable path, Ronnie gravitated toward the wrong influences, particularly in California's drug-fueled circles of the 1980s. He was very influenced by drugs, Tina said in a 1986 interview, acknowledging that despite the advantages she had worked so hard to provide, Ronnie's choices were his own. She made the painful decision to cut him off financially during that period, not out of anger, but out of a desperate hope that it might push him to change. Yet even as she stepped back, Tina never stopped caring. "I kept a string," she said, meaning she always found ways to check on him to ensure he was alive, safe, and had what he truly needed. Sometimes love means letting go while still holding on. And in time, that approach seemed to help. By the 1990s, Ronnie began to turn his life around. He found stability, stayed out of the headlines, and began to carve out a more grounded existence. Like both his parents, Ronnie had music in his blood. He became a skilled bass guitarist and joined a band called Manufactured Funk. While he never reached the musical heights of his parents, he didn't seem to chase that level of fame either. In 1993, he had a small role in What's Love Got to Do with It? The film that portrayed his mother's life, showing that he remained connected to her story, even if only in brief moments. Ronnie also found love. In March 2007, he married French singer and media personality Ike Turner. At 46, Ronnie had settled into a quiet dual life between the US and France with his wife. Ike often spoke warmly of him, describing Ronnie as her true angel and best friend. Despite his earlier struggles, Ronnie had finally built something that looked like peace, a loving relationship, and a quieter, more balanced life. But peace, in Ronnie's case, was tragically short-lived. In 2022, at the age of 62, Ronnie Turner passed away due to complications from colon cancer and cardiovascular disease. His death on December 8th came less than 6 months before Tina's own passing, adding yet another devastating loss to her life. Tina publicly mourned her youngest son with a simple, heartfelt tribute. "Ronnie, you left the world far too early." Accompanying her words was a somber black and white image, a mother's silent cry to the world. Losing a child is every parent's worst nightmare. Losing two is unimaginable. For Tina, Ronnie's death was another reminder of how little control even the strongest among us have over fate. Still, she showed resilience in her grief, strength in her sorrow, and grace in the way she honored Ronnie's memory. Ronnie's life was not perfect, but it was real. He stumbled, he fought, he loved, and in the end he found connection and care. His story speaks to all of us who believe in second chances, who've watched loved ones fight through dark chapters, and who've held on to hope that healing is possible, even if it comes quietly and far from the stage. In Ronnie's short time here, he gave Tina Turner a son to be proud of. Not because he was flawless, but because he was human. Tina Turner's journey as a mother was filled with heartbreak, silence, distance, and deep, enduring love. Through Craig's quiet pain, Ike Jr.'s struggle for identity, Michael's withdrawal, and Ronnie's search for redemption, we see not just the legacy of a music icon, but of a woman who tried in her own way to love through the wreckage of her past. She was far from flawless, no mother ever is. Yet behind the legendary voice and the image of unshakable strength was a woman who knew heartbreak, who clung to hope, and who continued to give even when her children pulled away. Some she lost, others she could not reach, but she never truly released them from her heart. For every parent who has endured loss or stood quietly as their children walked their own paths, Tina's story reflects a truth we all feel, that love often stretches beyond presence, and that the bond between mother and child can survive distance, silence, and even sorrow.